In 2025, we've had a crazy amount of great games releasing, and we have another one joining the ranks, this time with Mercury Steam's Blades of Fire. This one is coming out on May 22nd to the Epic Games Store, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5 for $60. It does have a demo available that you can carry over your save into the full game when it releases. So if this looks up your alley, and what I say, put this on your radar, and it sounds interesting to you, you'll be able to try it out before buying, thanks to the publisher 505 Games for letting me have an early copy. Blades of Fire can easily be described as a melting pot of different games, most notably like Dark Souls and God of War 2018, and that could be a potential turnoff to some because of the combat. But once you get your hands on the game and it clicks with you, it really is something special. I will mention I was playing on Steel difficulty, aka hard mode. At first glance, you might think it's your standard generic action adventure, but MercurySteam has put some really neat ideas in here that make the game feel fresh. Doesn't linger on telling any major exposition or lore. You play as Aran de Lira, and your goal is to kill the queen, accompanied by a young guy named Adso. You venture off into the world with very, very little knowledge. You know what the characters know in the moment. Throughout the game, you'll start to learn more and more as you defeat enemies and visit various places. As Adso records and researches, and later will give you more tips on how to defeat those enemies, where the weak spots are, and starts like that, and more lore with the story behind the enemies or some locations that you go through. There are also some optional dialogue that you can choose to trigger for more lore and backstory between the characters. The chemistry between the two is pretty good. They'll throw some light jabs at each other, and you can learn more about their past in the optional dialogues. Now, you may think that the game plays it kind of too straight and serious in the beginning, but don't worry, it leads into the silliness and lightheartedness too. Now, you may feel like the game kind of skips over some things, like you don't really get a sit down talking about the two, and like their friendship kind of like goes off pretty fast, but I don't think that really matters here. And at the time of me writing this, I did not finish the game's story in time that this video goes live, but the story so far and all of the lore that in the menus I've been reading, it was all pretty interesting and engaging, and I want to see where it goes. But I know I have played enough to know that MercurySteam has crafted something special. MercurySteam did an incredible job with the world and level design here. The exploration is so well done, and it's so rewarding. You want to go down every path and try to unlock every shortcut, see how everything wraps back around. I was saying to myself, oh, this is where this leads, or, well, oh wow, I'm back here. It's always a great sign to see another anvil, this game's version of a bonfire. With the anvils, you can easily fast travel between them, rest, repair weapons, or break them down to get more materials, or go to the forge. The exploration is somewhat mandatory or necessary. This sounds kind of strong, but this is the only way to get health, stamina, and flask upgrades, or getting more stars for your weapons that you can craft in the forge. I was so excited to finally get another health flask just by exploring and getting a cryptex. Down every path there might be a chest, weapon statue, or an optional fight you'll have to unlock. There are some areas that are blocked off via weapon runes, so you'll have to progress further into the story to unlock those areas. There are also items that you can find that are for a side quest. I did find that I was overthinking the path forward sometimes, or I was trying to solve a puzzle I didn't have the ability to. Some of the paths to progress are blended in a little too well. I was always eager to get to the next area and explore some more, or something like a previously blocked off area. Blades of Fire doesn't have an issue where your companion will spoil what to do or when you're trying to solve a puzzle. There is an option to get your current mission objective, but it doesn't plainly tell you what to do. It maybe has 2 or 3 lines of dialogue that kind of tell you the same thing, but in slightly different tweaks. You do have the option to send Edzo back to camp if you don't want him there. So far, there was only one NPC that had some annoying repeating barks, but nothing spoiler related. Just barks about hiding or combat starting. And Edzo can get a little annoying when you're going down ladders or climbing up ropes, but it's just like the same 2 or 3 lines that are quite annoying. When I had to go to work the next day, I still had Blades of Fire on my mind. There's just something about this game when overcoming the adversity of an area. Maybe it's a boss, or maybe just trying to get all the items in the area and doing it all over again in a new area is such a fun time. Blades of Fire is a video game and it knows it, and I think that's why it's so good at what it does. The combat in Blades of Fire is so satisfying. I'll admit at first it did take a bit getting used to, and I was debating if I should lower the difficulty, but the more I played of it, it finally clicked. Looking at footage, you'll probably think this is more like a Souls-like experience, but I think it's a bit more than that. Since this has directional base attacks, you got head, left, right, and body, with also having pierce, slash, and blunt types of attacks. If you don't attack with your right weapon, your attack will just bounce off the armor and causing no damage. Early on, I found myself gravitating towards using spears and polearms. It's so satisfying to seeing heads crushed or arms sliced off in a single blow. As the game goes on, you'll be pushed into using different weapon types. All of them are fun to use, and some will be way better than others in certain matchups, like if a boss is using a slower and bigger weapon. It may be best to counter with a faster dual daggers or twin axes or something like that. Or maybe you need a heavier, slower weapon to break through a bunch of armor they have. The more you attack, the more you use your stamina and the slower you will be. If you try to attack with empty stamina, you will pull off a painfully slow attack, which may get you in a bit of a bind, but you can easily dodge out of it slowly still. But when you hold block, you'll gain it back pretty quickly and you'll get back into a fight. And when you get any weapons that can parry a bit, and when you parry in an attack, you'll be granted a short burst of unlimited stamina, so you can go on the defensive a bit, but if you get hit, it goes away. One thing that needs to be getting used to is the enemies. Sometimes will have a long attack combos, even like the little mobs here and there. They got some crazy long combo strings, so it might be worthwhile to wait and see before attacking. And with Souls, like, you usually attack, dodge away, attack, dodge away again. But in this game, it sometimes feels like the attacks track you as you dodge roll away or just sidestep, and you still get hit. But I just think it is, you're just still getting a comboed, because they might swing a sword, but like kind of swing it, also bring it back, and that counts as another attack that they have. But I didn't feel like it went super unfair in that aspect. One thing I think they went a little bit overboard on is the enemy placements and the amount of mobs and groups near each other. This has deliberate crunchy combat, and it's kind of slow, so it does feel like a bit unfair at times, like doing a run back or trying to figure out where to go, and you die and then you have to go defeat everyone again. There are some bigger enemies that don't respawn, which is nice. Some of the mobs can aggro some other enemies that are a bit farther away than they shouldn't be aggroed for, and that can get messy very quickly. Another minor annoyance is smaller areas. If you have a larger weapon and you attack, it might just hit the wall and bounce off, which is fine, but the enemy's swings can just phase through the wall and still hit you, which is kind of annoying. But thankfully, in this game, if you use the charged attacks, some of the smaller mobs can die in one hit if you're using the correct weapon and doing the most amount of damage. And if you have a spear or a great sword or a longer sword and you're in your slash stance, you can take out multiple guys at once. Overcoming a tough boss or a mini boss gives you that same feeling of accomplishment as any of these From Software titles. Each time you attack an enemy, the weapon degrades, and each strike will do a little bit less damage each time. That causes the overall weapon stability to go down. A lot of people may not like this mechanic in other games, but since this game is centered around it, it doesn't feel like a chore. In Blades of Fire, there is no armor, no leveling stats, or anything like that. The weapons you craft are the stats, and when you die, you drop your current weapon that you're holding, and that becomes petrified until you pick it up again. It may not seem like that big of a loss compared to losing currency in Souls-likes, but it is defeating all the same. Just think about if you're fighting a really tough boss and it has a little run back and you use that weapon to take out some of the mobs in your way and you don't have that, so stuff like that can cause a little headache. You really want to have multiple weapon types and try to save your best weapons for the bosses. If your weapon is doing a little damage and you aren't near an anvil, you can quickly resharpen your weapon at the cost of your overall weapon's health. Something I always saved for like bosses or mini bosses if I wanted to do the high amount of damage. If you feel like you aren't doing enough damage or getting destroyed by mobs, it is time to hit the forge. The Primordial Forge is where you'll interact with the game's central theme and mechanic of weapon crafting. This is something else that it doesn't really put its best foot forward, with seemingly being too complex at first, but over the course of the game you get better at it. Starting off, you won't have much options of what to craft, but as you defeat a certain amount of enemies, you'll get their forge scroll and you'll be able to craft it. In here you will be able to pick what type of steel, wood, and all of the other options. Maybe you want to focus on slashing, you can pick materials that boost that stat. Once you pick all of the materials, you'll be able to begin the forging minigame. Here you will have to strike the hot metal into the shape of the weapon outline. The goal is to get as many stars as possible, so you'll be able to repair that weapon if you have that required materials. So if you get like a 3-star weapon, you can repair that 3 times. You need to change the angle and the strength of your strikes so that the metal spreads across the weapon outline. You can skip this part altogether if you want, but you will not get any stars. The more you forge, it becomes easier and you'll understand what the game wants from you. I would try to make a spear as early as possible. That outline is easier to get what you have to do. Luckily, if you have a bunch of stars, let's say I made a 5-star sword before, if you make that same type of sword, you can use the forge memory to get the same amount of stars on that same sword type. This aspect of the game may be a deal breaker for some, but trust me, once you know what you need to do and what it wants from you, it won't be a problem. After crafting a weapon, you can name it yourself or choose from a set of auto-generated names. A bit into the game, they'll introduce weapon fame. The more you use that weapon, the higher fame it'll get. And once it gets at the end of its life, meaning it can't be repaired anymore, or you don't have enough crafting materials and you don't want to use it anymore, you can go to an NPC and turn it in to get some of the rarer materials. At the time of me writing this and where I'm at in the game, I don't feel like I need myself to grind out any materials just yet, but it may change down the line if I want to keep using some of the weapons I have. To me, it's clear that MercurySteam put fun first here, and I think that's what's so great about it. It reminds me of those AA games from the PS2 or 360 days where it may not be a looker and doesn't give off the greatest first impressions from trailers or gameplay, but once you get your hands on it, you'll fall in love and you'll tell all your friends about it. If you're looking for a long game to sink your teeth into or want a fresh take on the Souls-like or deliberate combat games, I highly recommend Blades of Fire. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think about the game and if you're going to pick it up. And I will see you in the next video.